let me introduce today's speaker, Shekhar. Shekhar is, I have been knowing him for quite a long time, and he has been always in the leadership positions in the technology industry. I think the first time I met him, he was at BA, and BA was really one of the cool companies in Silicon Valley. And currently, Shekhar is heading Big Insights offering on cloud for IBM, and he was also a development head. Prior to this, he was a development head for Big Insights in general, and also the open source version. So it's great to have a speaker like him here, and also I would like to, for many of the attendees, you may not know that the first speaker of this meetup who started this, Robert, is here today, and I would like to thank Robert to be present and to make this meetup more interesting. And next I will request Shekhar to get started.
Thanks for such a great introduction, Gajanan. So, Gajanan and I actually met in our kids' kindergarten chess class. We were coaches.
We were coaches, teachers.
I won't tell you how old our kids are now. It's been many years. Okay, so let's get. Do I need this mic? Can you guys?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. All right. So before I start, let me just, as I always do, let me start with a show of hands. How many of you consider yourself as being, currently working on data governance products, or have ever worked on data governance products? Okay, about a fourth of the people. How many consider yourself as working or having ever worked on data security products? Okay, that's a larger number. What about data prep products? Okay, small number. What about pure open source? One person. How many of you got an email last year from Target saying that your credit card information was compromised? And how many of you have ever gotten an email from Hillary Clinton's personal email account? Nobody, okay. Me neither. So that pretty much summarizes my talk. But let's start with the problem statement. Data swarm. So what makes it a data swarm? By its definition, the data lake accepts data from all kinds of sources, and it's big data. So there is volume, there is variety, there is velocity, and there is all this gunk that collects as the water is obviously stagnant. Now the problem that we face with big data, it's the similar problems that we face in the traditional data warehouse space. However, it's much bigger. It is big data after all that we're dealing with, and what we need, the solutions that we need are the same, are similar solutions. Really, it's governance, semantic consistency, and access controls. As I said, it's a huge problem with data coming from all kinds of sources, not just enterprise or transactional data, but in the data lake you get public data as well as social media data. It's used as an archive. So I mentioned Target and Hillary Clinton. As I was researching for this talk, I stumbled upon this very interesting article from Forbes in January. That talks about 2014. Obviously, there were many data breaches, but it predicted that 2015 would be the year of personal data governance scandal. And this article, remember, came out in January, and sure enough, I think the Hillary Clinton personal email scandal broke in late February or early March. So, can you guess how much money Target spent on data security products? Not that much. $1.6 million. That's it. Well, now, in the bigger scheme of things, if you're talking about just the data security space, and that's a reasonable amount. $1.6 million isn't. I think it's a reasonable amount for spending on data security products. And yet they were hacked. Yet they have problems. Hillary Clinton, obviously, the State Department has reasonable data governance policies. It has reasonable products. Obviously, she could use the State Department email system, which is properly governed. So in that case, that was a people problem. Yeah. So Gartner, a few months ago, in a report, talked about the importance of collaboration for data governance. So that's the key I want to emphasize. That data governance is not just about technology; it's about people and processes. Now, just understanding. Some of you, who work in this space know this, but some of the key areas of data governance include, knowing lineage of data, understanding and making sure that the data that is coming to your applications that you're using for your reports is high quality data, and that governance policies are properly defined for access controls and so on, and the data is properly understood through linking your metadata that exists in your lake with glossaries and vocabularies. And one key discipline, obviously, of data governance is data security. You can tell I like the water analogy. So, as the water flows in a water treatment system, of course, it gets better quality. It becomes of a quality eventually that can be consumed. But security is important too, especially in some countries where you need to make sure that there are auditing and access controls for the water that is flowing through your water treatment system. And countries do have that. However, when you talk about data, due to compliance regulations, encryption and masking becomes important as well. Because what you're dealing with is, all kinds of data, and you're dealing with people accessing that data, all of whom may not have permission to access that data. So if whether the data is in the cloud or in a non-production system, you would use encryption, masking, coupled with access controls for data. So bringing it all together, these are the 5 primary domains of data governance that Forrester talks about. Quality, reference, lifecycle management, security, as well as metadata management. Now, vendors who came from the data warehousing space, who've been there as far as data governance is concerned, like IBM and Informatica, they have strong presence here. They've had strong presence in data warehouses as well as in data marts. But there are other players, and now both IBM and Informatica have a reasonable presence in the big data space as well. Other vendors are coming up, from the open source space, pure play vendors in any or a few of those disciplines, and I'll talk more in a couple of slides about that. IBM, so this is an IBM slide. When we talk about data governance, we obviously try to relate it to our products. But Forrester considers IBM as the leader in this space, so people pay attention when IBM talks about this. Now, you have to keep in mind, as I said earlier, that both IBM and Informatica came from the data warehousing space. So some of these disciplines apply to both data warehousing and big data. So starting with finding your data, curating it, associating vocabulary and business glossary to your metadata, collecting it and putting it into collections of related data, and then handing it over to stakeholders for collaboration. That's to improve the curation and those collections that you've built. That's where the people aspect comes in. And then this is where a lot of the products are around. Creation of reference data, information governance and data quality policies, as well as security and archiving. And offload comes in when you're going from your outside the data lake into the lake. And finally, now you're ready for analysis and reuse of that data in other applications or reports. So, now this slide is by no means meant to be comprehensive and include all products in this space. So if I have not included your favorite product, I apologize. But as you can see, what I've included are two adjacent spaces to governance and security. I've included data prep and I've included open source because they're very relevant to this space. So starting with Cloudera and Hortonworks, who obviously are open source vendors, they're making a big push into data governance. And who knows, they'll go higher, Cloudera, probably. Waterline and Tamer, they are more in the data governance space, data inventory, exploration, metadata. Dataguise, that's some of you are from Dataguise, so you know that they are the big data security experts. Revelatix, which was recently acquired by Teradata, has presence both in data governance and data prep. And Trifacta and Paxata are reasonably strong players in the big data prep space. I mentioned both Informatica and IBM earlier. I'm biased towards IBM, obviously, not just because I work there, but also because we have an open source distribution. So if you want a single vendor solution, IBM makes the most sense. So IBM gives you open source, it gives you data governance, and it gives you data prep, and more things. If you go up the stack, analytics and so on as well. Anyone want to chime in other products that I've missed? Anyone in this space? So this is quite comprehensive.
Yeah, in security particularly, there are many components.
Security, okay.
What are the others?
Blue Talon, I was trying to hide from the big blue. No, Blue Talon. We do security control and auditing of data as it flows through Hadoop and big data and data warehouses.
I see. Right. I've heard of it.
E8 securities. E8 is also in that space. E8. Yeah. Or some E8 standard. I don't know, security related standard. So there are quite a few startups which are in strategy.
Right. There are many new players. Yes. Many new people coming in. And of course, Oracle. If there was anybody from Oracle, they would chime in. Okay.
But in data governance, even SAP may have business.
Absolutely. SAP from the business objects business. All right. So moving on, let's get into some details of what the offerings are from these vendors. Hortonworks, obviously we all know it as an open source vendor. They don't do anything proprietary. Everything they do is open source. So the two key projects that are relevant in the data governance space that they participate in are Falcon and Ranger. Falcon is about data pipelines, managing your data lifecycle as it flows through the cluster. I believe Falcon has contributors not just from Hortonworks, but InMobi plays there as well. Apache Ranger came to Hortonworks through the XA Secure acquisition. And they're positioning that, so Hortonworks, HTTP includes Knox as well. And so this is, I see it as an umbrella project that includes all global security policies. And that's where they'll make the big push going forward. Some of you may have seen the announcement from Hortonworks about the data governance initiative. I think this announcement came out in January, or maybe it was at the same time as Strata. But what they're doing here is, so this is with Hortonworks working with Aetna, Merck, Target, SAS. So all these vendors are coming together for this governance initiative, and since Hortonworks is a part of it, they're pushing Falcon and Ranger as being key pieces of this initiative. And it really, I think one key here is that it's an extensible framework for enterprises to be able to build governance on top of. And so yeah, if I'm in the governance space, I would pay close attention to this initiative. I think we'll see more announcements around this going forward. Cloudera has Navigator, which works on top of Cloudera Manager. And really, it's not open source. They call it closed source. I call it proprietary. I'm sorry, I have to take these digs at Cloudera because they call everything, IBM does proprietary as well. So they cover some of these key disciplines of governance, including audit, discovery, lineage, etc. This is an IBM slide. So in this slide, I will cover some of the products that IBM has in the data governance space. And it's really under the InfoSphere information server umbrella that all these products exist. So the first product that I'm going to talk about is a product called Business Glossary, and that helps you answer these kinds of questions. Do you understand your data? Do you understand what's coming in your reports? And so essentially, Business Glossary helps you associate terms with your metadata. Okay, it's a very simplistic explanation. Of course, it does much more, but if you have these kinds of questions, you need Business Glossary. The second product I'm going to talk about is a product called Information Analyzer, which is about data quality. So using Information Analyzer, you can define data quality rules, and you can define monitoring around those data quality rules and create reports to determine what the quality of your data is, and ensure as your data changes that the quality remains at a level that you expect it to. And the third product is called the Metadata Workbench, which gives you lineage of your data. So essentially how your data is flowing through the cluster or through the various data sources outside your data lake. And so these are the questions that this product helps you answer. Essentially lineage related questions. Any questions on this? Because I can talk a lot about this slide. As I said, it's the information server umbrella. The flagship in the information server umbrella is a product called Data Stage, which is an ETL product. And then there is Quality Stage, which helps you cleanse your data. So those are the other products that exist in this umbrella.
What is the granularity of the data lineage?
Okay, so granularity of the data lineage is tables and columns. Okay, so it will tell you, so there are various pieces of information that constitute the lineage information. So if the data was moved using one of the information server products, then it has the lowest granularity possible. And if it wasn't moved using the information server products, then sometimes you have to tell it, sometimes you have to use discovery products to determine that, in which case the granularity will not be as much. So it's an it depends answer.
The content that's already in there, can other people leverage that in adjacent tools to do other things?
So there are APIs certainly available that let you access the metadata information that is stored in the repository. So yes, absolutely, it's possible.
Is it through an API or is it through just the content in the database itself?
The schema, you mean?
Yeah.
We don't make the schema public. Schema of the repositories. It's APIs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How would you compare the features here versus what you have in, say, the Hortonworks stack in terms of governance and in terms of Navigator?
Right. So, now, first of all, you have to remember what I said earlier, which is that these products came from the data warehousing space. So, when you're looking at data inside and outside the data lake, these products work both places. Because traditionally, we've done data governance for data warehousing, for tables outside the lake. That's something that you won't find in Cloudera and Hortonworks. I don't believe they have either of these things, the glossary or the data quality.
For sure.
No. Right, I know. Right. And so now this is, so at least as far as Hortonworks is concerned, it's open source. So I'm sure other people are thinking about it and contributing to it. But so is IBM. So I think, and the Forrester report in 2014 identified IBM as the leader in this space. Of course, Informatica is a close second. I don't believe Cloudera or Hortonworks even figure in that report.
But about the IBM products as well as Informatica products, one question comes to mind is that with respect to big data, are these products really integrated as a platform, or are there still different pieces and you have to patch
It's a
them?
very good question. Yeah, so
That is that's
So-
always a puzzle.
right. I think the honest answer is they are somewhat integrated. But the fact is that there are two key common pieces across these products. One is the repository, the metadata repository. They all share the metadata repository, and they all share what we call the PX engine. That's the parallel engine that is used for processing, including data movement, etc. So to that degree, they're integrated. And then there's work going on to integrate them.
Installations may not be that big yet to need all that stuff in database.
I mean, there are, in data lakes, yes, sir, yes.
Does DB2 have the ability to have external tables in
So, So what we have really is a component of Big Insights called Big SQL. What that does is that leverages DB2 DBF, the distributed DB2. So really, Big SQL, if you're familiar with Impala, Big SQL directly competes with Impala. But because it's based on DB2, it processes all the standard SQL 2012 queries. So, and the benchmarks that have been published which show that, if you're talking about SQL and Hadoop, Big SQL is by far the leader. And there are performance benchmarks that have been published.
The question here was, it's interesting because if you have the ability to have external tables on non-DB2 file formats, like a CSV or a Parquet or Avro, and in principle you could tie whatever is here to those by defining your external table and get everything that you want. Leverage everything that's already there.
Right. So I don't think DB2 has that capability yet.
Yeah, even I think none of the databases, like relational databases, it's not.
Oh, Postgres has that.
Yeah, but it's not an enterprise relational database.
They built Redshift on it, so.
The real enterprise databases, it's not an attractive proposition for them.
Yeah, I'm not a DB2 expert. I might be wrong, but I don't think.
Don't give me ideas.
Okay, moving on. So I'll wrap up with some customer use cases. The first one is a data warehouse augmentation use case, and an automotive manufacturer, one of the big automotive manufacturer who came to us because they were having quality problems, not data quality but car quality problems, and so they had a big data governance problem, which led to a product quality problem. So they had the three V's, volume, variety, and velocity. Huge amounts of data, all kinds of unstructured and structured data, and there was no way to share it, if you couldn't curate it or if you couldn't build collections out of it. So they deployed Big Insights, IBM Big Insights, and the information server product, and were able to improve their car quality significantly, and really doubled the number of cars that showed up in the J.D. Power Award for initial quality in just 1 year. And they lowered their warranty costs. IT benefits that they got included performance improvements, total cost of ownership improvements, etc. The second customer use case that I'm going to talk about is a US bank which had issues more along the lines of traditional data governance issues. They didn't know the lineage of the data, they didn't know the quality of the data, they couldn't trust it, they didn't have access controls. So what they bought the IBM Information Server product and were able to employ the technology that I just talked about, the products that I talked about, including business glossary, metadata workbench, information analyzer, and were able to solve these problems that I just listed, and were able to get greater efficiencies in reporting, collaboration across business and IT.
So what is the backend database of, is it DB2 for information, metadata, information server?
Teradata. Not this US bank, sorry. That was the auto manufacturer.
No, the IBM product which does the metadata.
Yes.
So backend
is DB2. The repository is maintained in DB2, but we do provide an option to configure that database. So if you're an Oracle shop, Information Server lets you store your repository in Oracle. Okay, the final use case that I'm going to talk about is more in the weeds, but it's an interesting use case. And really it brings our discussion a full circle here, and you'll see why. But let me talk about the technology first. So the problem that this large international bank came to us with was the problem of auditing who was accessing PII, or personal identifiable information, of their customers. And really, it's just their client executives that had access to the systems. So where was that? They wanted to detect suspicious activity as far as their client executives were concerned, as they were accessing the customer information. So even though they were authorized to access it, they wanted to detect suspicious activity within that access. And they started looking at log files and figuring out if they could analyze the log data to determine that suspicious activity. But obviously, all access to all applications is not logged. All the information that is going back and forth from the applications is not logged. So collaboratively, we ended up determining that HTTP interception was the best way. So we intercept all the HTML traffic between the web server and the app server for all the applications, and feed that into stream processing, and this is the InfoSphere Streams product, where that HTML data was parsed and filtered, and using text analytics, PII was extracted. And then on the other end, we got the client information from their warehouse and fed it into a Hadoop cluster. This is Big Insights, and used that to reconcile the entity information that was extracted through the stream processing. And based on that, they were able to figure out who was accessing what, which client executive was accessing which client data. And the reason I'm saying that this brings us to a full circle is because that the story is not complete there. Because my question was, now what do you do with this data? So that's where the people and the processes come. So the IT, once they built this solution, and in the process of building the solution, they worked with the business folks to figure out what processes needed to be put in place and what people need to be involved in putting those processes in place. So some examples of suspicious activity that they generated alerts for were things like, a client executive accessing customer information after hours, or when they were on vacation, or client executive accessing a certain number of records in a small amount of time. So those were the kinds of alerts that were generated out of the system, and then appropriate actions were taken based on the policies that were in place. Okay, so that's my talk. Again, emphasis on people and processes along with technology. Thank you for coming. I'm happy to talk about Big Insights products, the Big Insights suite, if you're interested. But also happy to take other questions.
So if you go back to the last slide for a second, how do you deduplicate the data? Because the PII information you're extracting and your reference data, there's going to be some level of duplication in what you see in those logs. And then, what kind of techniques or machine learning, whatever else you use, how was that done for this particular customer, and what may be some general techniques?
Now, so I wasn't involved with the implementation. I was just involved with helping sell this. So I can't answer that question, but I'm happy to find out for you. And I think it was Java code. I don't think they used any sophisticated tools for it.
They might have used OpenNL. What technology did you use to do the HTTP capture?
Again, sorry, won't be able to answer those questions here.
Can you put a little more color around what's in the reference data warehouse?
So this is really information about the client executives and the customers. Right? So really, because what you want to do, what they wanted to do from this information was reconcile the entities that they'd extracted with real customers or real client executives. So, because this could have snippets of that information. This could have just the name or just the customer ID. So they wanted to reconcile this so that they created appropriate alerts. All right.
And so, just a quick question around where you see the IBM suite growing and the role. There's a lot of the open source marketplace will basically decide what's the best point solution for any given problem, and people will build up on top of that. So the question is, how do you see IBM sort of dealing with that, or what's your thought on how that portfolio will be managed?
Right. So, we're dealing with that right now. And we've been dealing with that for 4 years, since Hadoop came about. And really, IBM's position has always been on the value add. IBM makes money on the value add. Open source has been commoditized. You can get Hadoop distribution for free from Hortonworks. All you pay for is support. IBM is doing the same. We announced that we're going to participate in the ODP, the Open Data Platform Initiative in Strata. So we're going to give away the Hadoop distribution for free as well and only charge for support. So where IBM is going to make money and invest in is, of course, open source, because we're going to participate in that very, very strongly. But more importantly, in my mind, in analytics. Okay, so the stack that we build on top of. So going back here, the data governance area, the data prep area, and then tooling on top of it, analytics, and so on. So IBM has a strong suite of products in predictive analytics, in prescriptive analytics. We have Cognos as well. SPSS is a company that was bought for predictive analytics. So there is a lot of investment going on in those areas, as well as making sure that we improve, the data governance products, the data prep products.
So everyone's ganging up on Cloudera.
Well, we see it the other way. Cloudera is ganging up on us.
Well, you got one on the other side, and how many on the other side?
Yeah, but really, Hortonworks is obviously going the open source route. Cloudera is following the IBM strategy.
So the last example was a custom-built security application. Do you see big insights being more regularly integrated with some of your security suite?
Absolutely. Right. So we have QRadar, for example, and Guardian. So Guardian, we already have strong integration with. So I think security is a very important area for Hadoop, and I talked about some of that in this. So absolutely, and also we'll work with the open source community, with Knox going forward, Ranger, so on.
Wait, how does Guardian work with Big SQL?
Guardian works with Big SQL.
Like the agent, so where does the agent sit?
Agent sits on every node that DB2 sits on. So underneath Big SQL is DB2.
It.
Just along the same lines, do any of your security products leverage the governance information that you generate and manage?
So yeah, I mean, governance is a broad topic.
Well, a lineage, for example, and that sort of thing.
So that would, one example would be, you asked what, Guardian or security in general?
Just security in general, right?
I'm not aware of any direct integration existing between these. But, I'm sure we've done service projects for that. Yeah, I mean, the primary products we have in data-related security are Guardian and Optin. Optin, is integrated with information server. Guardian, I don't believe so.
So these big insights, open source distribution is based on Apache web distribution.
Absolutely, it's completely open source.
But it is, but means this started from Apache.
Absolutely,
open source.
yes, from the very beginning. And really the recent announcement at Strata reinforced IBM's commitment in open source. We're a part of this consortium, which includes Hortonworks and Pivotal and some of these other companies. So, so absolutely, we're coming out with a release soon, which will have the latest versions of the full group ecosystem stack.
So does Big Insights still work with GPFS? Earlier you support both HDFS and GPFS.
It absolutely does. So GPFS is an alternative file system that Big Insights sits on top of, and provides policy compliance and security benefits replication. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.